Ancient scrolls that were buried in volcanic ash during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius are now being deciphered
For centuries, the Maya have been recognized as one of the most intellectually sophisticated civilizations of the ancient world. Their cities rose from dense jungle. Their astronomers tracked celestial cycles with extraordinary accuracy. Their mathematicians developed the concept of zero independently. And their scribes created one of the most complex writing systems ever devised in the pre-modern world. Yet despite all of this, much of what the Maya actually recorded, their intentions, their fears, their calculations, and their understanding of time, was believed to be lost forever. That belief centered on a brutal historical fact. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mesoamerica in the 16th century, they encountered a civilization that recorded its knowledge not on stone alone, but in books. Screenfold manuscripts made from bark paper documented astronomy, ritual cycles, dynastic history, and sacred cosmology. To the Maya, these books were essential instruments of knowledge. To the Spanish clergy, they were heretical. In 1562, Bishop Diego de Landa ordered the destruction of Maya texts in the Yucatan. Thousands of books were burned. What survived did so by accident, distance, or removal to Europe. By the modern era, only 4 Maya codices were known to exist: the Dresden, the Madrid, the Paris, and one deeply controversial manuscript whose authenticity was debated for more than 50 years. That manuscript is now known as the Maya Codex of Mexico. For decades, it sat in museum storage, rarely examined and often dismissed. Its pages were filled with bold figures, stark imagery, and unfamiliar symbols that resisted traditional interpretation. Many scholars believed it was a forgery, an imitation created to deceive collectors rather than a genuine relic of Maya civilization. That assumption no longer holds. Recent advances in imaging, materials science, and artificial intelligence have fundamentally changed how scholars approach ancient manuscripts. Instead of relying solely on visual comparison and stylistic judgment, researchers can now analyze pigments, fibers, chemical composition, and structural patterns at microscopic levels. When those tools were finally applied to the Maya Codex of Mexico, the results forced a complete reassessment. What emerged was not just proof of authenticity, but insight into a Maya worldview more severe, more methodical, and more unsettling than anyone expected. The Codex first entered the modern record in the 1960s under unusual circumstances. According to accounts later corroborated by archaeologists, a Mexican collector named José Sáenz was approached by intermediaries claiming to possess ancient Maya artifacts. Sáenz was flown to a remote location, driven to a cave, and shown a cache that included a folded bark paper book, a carved wooden mask, a sacrificial knife, and unused sheets of bark paper. The setting alone raised suspicion. There was no formal excavation, no documented context, no archaeological oversight. Sáenz purchased the book, unaware that it would ignite one of the most divisive debates in Mesoamerican archaeology. In 1971, the manuscript was exhibited publicly in New York at the Grolier Club, where it became known as the Grolier Codex. Photographs circulated among scholars worldwide. Almost immediately, criticism followed. Compared to the densely packed glyphs of the Dresden and Madrid codices, this manuscript appeared sparse. The figures were bold but simple. The text was minimal. Some scholars described the drawings as crude. Others pointed to faint red sketch lines beneath the paint or unusually straight page edges, arguing these were signs of modern manufacture. In 1975, J. Eric Thompson, one of the most influential Maya scholars of the 20th century, publicly declared the Codex a forgery. His judgment carried enormous weight. For decades afterward, the manuscript was largely dismissed without re-examination. It might have remained that way indefinitely had technology not changed the rules. In the early 2000s, a new generation of researchers revisited the codex with tools unavailable to earlier scholars. A four-person team led by Stephen Houston, Michael Coe, Mary Miller, and Carl Taube undertook a systematic reevaluation. Instead of asking whether the codex looked right, they asked whether it could physically be fake. The first focus was the paper. Maya books were made from amytal, a paper derived from the inner bark of fig trees. The pages of the codex were tested using non-destructive methods, including particle-induced X-ray emission and Rutherford backscattering spectrometry. These techniques allowed scientists to identify elemental composition without damaging the artifact. The results were unambiguous. The paper fibers matched pre-Hispanic bark samples. The white plaster coating was not lime-based, as in the European codices, but gypsum-based, a variation known from ancient Maya workshops. This difference was critical. A forger would have had no reason to choose a less familiar, historically obscure material. Pigment analysis told the same story. The black ink was carbon-based soot. The red pigment was hematite, an iron oxide used throughout ancient Mesoamerica. Most striking was the presence of Maya blue, a chemically complex pigment created by bonding indigo dye to a specific clay mineral. The formula for Maya blue was lost for centuries and only rediscovered by modern science in the late 20th century. Its presence ruled out modern fabrication. Radiocarbon dating provided the final confirmation. Accelerator mass spectrometry tests on the bark paper dated it to between 1021 and 1154 CE. That places the manuscript in the early post-classic period, making it potentially older than the Dresden Codex and the oldest readable book in the Americas. In 2018, after reviewing all available evidence, Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History officially declared the codex authentic. But authenticity was only the beginning. Once the manuscript was accepted as genuine, scholars turned to its content. And here, artificial intelligence played a decisive role. Maya writing is notoriously complex. Glyphs can function as sounds, words, or concepts depending on context. Many symbols appear only rarely, making them difficult to interpret. AI systems trained on thousands of glyph variants across inscriptions, stelae, and codices were able to detect patterns human analysts had missed. What the AI revealed was not a narrative history or a poetic text. The Maya Codex of Mexico is a working document, a technical manual for tracking the planet Venus and timing ritualized acts of violence. Venus was not simply a celestial body to the Maya, it was a regulator of fate. The Maya observed Venus with obsessive precision. Its 584-day cycle, disappearing behind the sun, re-emerging as the evening star, vanishing again, and returning as the morning star, was mapped and predicted far into the future. 5 Venus cycles align almost perfectly with 8 solar years, allowing long-term forecasting. In Maya belief, the rising of Venus as the morning star was associated with danger. War, disease, death, and sacrifice were believed to intensify under its influence. The Codex reflects this worldview with disturbing clarity. Each surviving page follows a consistent structure. Along one edge runs a vertical column of day names from the sacred 260-day ritual calendar. Across the top are numerical rings marking countdowns. At the center is a single image, often violent, sometimes explicitly lethal. These images are not symbolic abstractions. They depict bound captives, gods wielding weapons, severed heads, and attacks on temples. The AI analysis confirmed that the imagery corresponds directly to specific Venus phases. The numbers tell when. The images tell what. One page shows the god Kawil facing a kneeling captive. Another depicts a death god presiding over execution. A skeletal figure holds a blade and a severed head. A spear is launched into a temple. A captive is claimed by a mountain deity. The repetition is deliberate. These were not isolated events, but recurring ritual cycles timed to the heavens. Unlike the Dresden Codex, which includes eclipse tables and broader astronomical data, the Maya Codex of Mexico is focused, narrow, and severe. It is not concerned with seasons or agriculture. It is concerned with control, aligning human action with celestial timing to manage cosmic risk. When compared to the other surviving codices, a clearer picture emerges. The Dresden Codex, held in Germany, is the most complex and scientifically rich, containing eclipse tables and long astronomical sequences. The Madrid Codex, preserved in Spain, functions as a practical ritual almanac for daily life, beekeeping, healing, farming, and ceremonies. The Paris Codex, fragmented and fragile, tracks long calendrical cycles and symbolic zodiac-like figures. The Maya Codex of Mexico stands apart. It is lean, direct, and operational. It reads less like a library text and more like a tactical guide. Its simplicity is not evidence of inferiority. It is evidence of specialization. This realization overturned one of the main arguments against its authenticity. What earlier scholars saw as crude or unsophisticated was, in fact, intentional efficiency. The manuscript was not meant to impress. It was meant to be used. That conclusion carries unsettling implications. The Codex reveals a civilization that did not merely observe the sky, but structured violence around it. Warfare and sacrifice were not chaotic or opportunistic. They were scheduled, codified, embedded in timekeeping systems that stretched centuries into the future. This does not make the Maya uniquely brutal by ancient standards. Many civilizations linked war to divine cycles. What makes the Maya distinctive is the precision with which they did so, and the fact that this precision was written down. The rediscovery and translation of the Maya Codex of Mexico does not romanticize the past. It clarifies it. It shows that advanced knowledge and ritualized violence were not opposites, but companions. That mathematical brilliance coexisted with cosmic fear, and that the Maya, for all their achievements, lived in a universe they believed was dangerous unless carefully managed. For decades, this book was dismissed because it did not fit expectations. It was too simple, too stark, too uncomfortable. Now, with its authenticity established and its meaning illuminated, it stands as one of the most important Maya texts ever recovered. Not because it reassures us, but because it does not. The Codex does not tell us what the Maya hoped for. It tells us what they feared and how seriously they took the task of surviving the sky.